They mocked her for being poor until the day she bought the whole compound. It was a rainy morning when Nina arrived at Peace Estate. Her slippers made a flapping sound as she walked through the compound gate. One was torn and held together with a safety pin. The other was nearly so less. She carried a small black nylon in one hand and held a leaking umbrella in the other. Her gown was oversized and faded, hanging on her like a borrowed life. Nobody helped her. Nobody even looked at her twice. She walked straight to the small back room beside the general tap, the room no one wanted because the ceiling leaked and the door couldn't lock, but it was all she could afford. She didn't speak to anyone. She didn't knock on a single door. She just dropped her bag, looked around the dirty room, and began sweeping like she was cleaning a mansion. Angela was the first to notice. "Who be that one?" she asked, standing at the corridor with a cup of tea in her hand. Joy, who was always full of herself, leaned on the wall and laughed. "Looks like one of those village housemaids. I'm even afraid to breathe the same air with her. She better not come near me with those her market-worn slippers, oh," Angela added, rolling her eyes. But Nina said nothing. When her broom broke halfway, she got down on her knees and used her palm to gather the remaining dust. By afternoon, she came outside with a tiny aluminum pot. No stove. No gas. Just 3 stones and a matchbox. She gathered sticks from the side of the gutter, struck the match 3 times before it caught fire, and placed the pot on it with a little rice and salt. No oil. No pepper. She covered it with a flat, rusted plate and sat by the fire like someone guarding treasure. Angela and Joy sat by the upstairs railings, watching her and giggling. "She even day blow fire with mouth. Who still does that in this age?" Joy scoffed. Angela shook her head, sipping her fruit juice. "If poverty was a person, it's definitely this girl." The next morning, Nina came out early and began fetching water from the tap. She fetched 6 buckets, arranged them neatly in front of her room, then sat quietly on the floor, peeling cassava with a small, blunt knife. Sarah, the landlady's daughter, passed by and paused. "Good morning," she said kindly. Nina smiled and greeted back softly, "Good morning, Ma." Sarah looked surprised. No one had called her Ma before. She smiled and walked away. But as soon as she turned the corner, Joy hissed behind her, "Sarah, better be careful with that girl, before she charms you. She looks like someone that will steal people's clothes and sell it for beans," Angela added. "She can't even speak well. She just look like Mumu," Joy said mockingly. They all laughed loudly. This time Nina heard them, but she didn't react. She simply turned her face to the sky and closed her eyes like someone praying for strength. Days turned into weeks. The girls in the compound made it a habit to mock her every move. They called her names: village rat, compound slave, ash girl, water fetcher. She never talked back. Not even once. Every evening, while others took selfies and wore makeup, Nina cleaned the corridor, washed the gutter, or mended her clothes with needle and thread. "She's acting like she's in a movie," Angela said once. "She's just looking for attention. Watch, she'll soon disappear like the rest of them," Joy replied. But she didn't disappear. She stayed. Quietly, calmly, strong. And every night, after they had all gone to bed, a soft light glowed from her window, a flickering lantern, and a book in her hand. The sky was burning hot that day. Nina had just returned from washing clothes for Madame Felicia down the street. Her hands were bruised, fingers wrinkled like boiled yam, and her feet were dusty from walking barefoot back home. She entered the compound quietly, with a nylon containing a handful of rice and a tiny sachet of oil she had managed to get paid with. She placed 3 stones beside the gutter, lit a fire with leftover matches, and placed her little pot on it. As the smoke curled into the air, Angela and Joy stepped out with their usual arrogance, holding phone cameras, dressed like slay queens with loud music playing from a speaker. "What's that smell?" Joy shouted dramatically, holding her nose. "Is something dying in this compound?" Angela looked down and saw Nina crouched by the fire. "Oh, it's Madame Firewood again," she laughed. "I swear, if I ever boil rice like this, may thunder strike me." The girls burst into loud laughter. Nina didn't say a word. She gently stirred the rice, poured in a few drops of oil, and covered it with the old plate. Minutes later, she stood up to enter her room for salt. That was the mistake. In the few seconds she left the fire, Joy looked at Angela. Should we do it? Angela smirked. Let's teach her how we roll in this compound. They walked down and stood before the pot. Then Angela kicked the 3 stones apart with her foot. The pot fell, the rice spilled into the sand, and the tiny oil she had poured in was gone in seconds. By the time Nina came back, she stood frozen. Her only food, gone. The fire was out, the stones scattered, the rice soaked in gutter water. Joy folded her arms. Next time, put firewood inside your room. This is not your village. Angela laughed. Or better still, don't cook at all. You're making us look like poor people. Nina bent slowly and began gathering the wet rice into the plate, not because she would eat it, but because she was trying not to cry. The more she packed, the more they laughed. That night, Nina didn't cook again. She sat on her bed in the dark, hugging her knees. The rain began to fall slowly at first, then heavily. The ceiling leaked. Water dripped into her room. She placed a bowl to collect it, but it was overflowing already. And then, she broke. She pressed her face into her palms and cried quietly. Not because of the rice, not because of the roof, but because she had no one, no mother, no father, no friend, just her and her dreams. Days passed. Madame Felicia sent her to wash again. She went. A tailor gave her an old torn wrapper to mend. She did. The compound girls saw her walking home with laundry and mocked her again. Do you think rich people will marry you with cracked feet? See, as her back is bent like 80 years old. If hunger had a younger sister, it would be Nina. One morning, a boy named Daniel moved into the compound. Tall, quiet, handsome. He stayed in the room opposite Nina. The first day he greeted her, Nina looked confused. She wasn't used to people being kind. You stay here? He asked. Yes, she nodded. He smiled gently. You're stronger than you look. That night, Angela noticed him talking to Nina. She flared. The next day, she walked up to Nina while she was fetching water and slapped the bucket out of her hand. It hit the ground with a loud bang. You want to use pity to steal somebody, man? You think men like girls with rashes and oversized skirts? She raised her hand to slap Nina again, but Daniel came out of nowhere and held it mid-air. Enough, he barked. Angela froze. Daniel turned to Nina. Let's go. They walked away together. That night, Nina sat on her bed, looking at the stars through her broken roof, whispering prayers to the sky. Not for revenge, but for strength. And while others slept with their phones in hand, Nina stayed up late, using candlelight to write in a small notebook. Dreams, goals, plans. She was planting her future in the darkness. The next morning came with thunderclouds and cold breeze, but Nina had already been up before the rain. She was outside scrubbing Madame Felicia's veranda with her bare hands, her fingers pale from the cold, knees soaked in soapy water. As she worked, Daniel walked past and paused. You haven't eaten? He asked, watching her from the corridor. She shook her head. I'll eat after I'm done. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the hollow cheeks, the tired eyes, the silent hunger she was too proud to admit. He stepped out, came back minutes later with a loaf of bread and a cup of hot tea in a flask. For you, he said. Nina paused. I can't collect this. You can, he said. And you will. She took it, and her hands trembled as she did. That single act of kindness did something to Nina's spirit. But the girls were watching. Later that evening, Angela stormed into the yard like a tornado. You want to form Cinderella? She shouted from the corridor. You think because you carried laundry for Daniel yesterday and he gave you bread, you've arrived? Nina tried to walk past, but Joy blocked her path. Angela snatched the empty flask from Nina's hand and smashed it on the floor. The sound echoed through the compound. Nina gasped. He gave me that. And so what? Angela barked. You're a charity case. You want to trap a man with pity? Not in this compound. Daniel came out and saw the broken flask. He didn't say a word. He simply walked away, but his silence said more than anger. That night, Nina made a decision. She sat down, opened her notebook again, and wrote just 3 words. Start from scratch. The next day, She took one of her torn wrappers, patched it herself, and went down the street to beg for an old tray. She began hawking pure water. From compound to compound, barefoot and shy, she walked under the sun, carrying her tray on her head, whispering, "Pure water, 20 naira." Some slammed doors in her face. Some ignored her like she was invisible. But she kept moving. Every coin she made, she saved. One evening, as she sat under the tree near the back fence of the compound, counting her coins quietly, she overheard Angela and Joy talking. "Babe, that guy Daniel is not ordinario," Joy whispered. "Why? Word on the street is, his uncle owns half of these houses. He's just here to lay low." Angela's eyes widened. "So he's not broke?" "Nope. He's rich. Angela stood up instantly. "Then I've been fighting the wrong battle. I need to shift strategy." The next few days, Angela changed. She started dressing in fancy clothes, wearing fake perfume, pretending to sweep outside Daniel's room. She'd laugh loudly anytime he passed, toss her hair, pretend to be helpful. But Daniel didn't respond. In fact, he started avoiding her. Meanwhile, Nina kept hawking, quietly, faithfully. She added snacks to her tray. Later, she bought cheap soap and sold that too. Slowly, she was becoming someone not rich, but not stuck. Then something happened. Angela, out of jealousy, decided to disgrace Nina publicly. It was a Saturday. The landlord called for a compound meeting. Everyone gathered. As Nina stood quietly by the corner, Angela stood up. "Landlord, please, we need to address something important. This girl," she pointed at Nina, "has been bringing bad luck to this compound. Every day, people complain about missing clothes, missing soap. It started when she began hawking. I suspect she's using juju." Gasps filled the air. Nina's mouth dropped open. "I swear," Joy added, "just yesterday, my slippers vanished. I saw her passing by." People started murmuring. Some nodded. Others looked suspicious. Daniel stood. "That's enough." Angela rolled her eyes. "Why are you defending her?" He turned slowly. "Because this is how the world destroys people before they rise." The landlord cleared his throat. "We will investigate this matter." Nina's eyes welled with tears, but she said nothing. She just picked up her tray and walked away. That night, rain fell again. But this time, she didn't cry. She wrote in her notebook, "They laugh now, but one day, I will return, and they will know." But what no one knew was that someone had been watching Nina from afar. Someone who had come to the compound not to live, but to choose. And Nina's story was about to take a turn no one, especially Angela, saw coming. Days passed, and life in the compound seemed to move as usual, but Nina's heart was restless. The accusations still stung like sharp thorns in her chest. Every glance from the neighbors felt heavy, every whisper like a cold wind. She continued her daily routine, hawking pure water, selling soap, and doing chores. Yet, inside her, a storm was building. She was tired of being the joke, the outcast, the bad luck girl. One late afternoon, as the sun began to dip, painting the sky in orange and pink, Nina was sitting by the small well, cleaning empty bottles she used to carry her water. She was so deep in thought she didn't notice the shadow approaching. "Excuse me, young lady," a calm voice called softly. Nina looked up to see a man standing there, a stranger to the compound. He was well dressed, but carried no arrogance. His eyes held something gentle, yet strong. "Yes?" Nina answered cautiously. "I've been watching you for some time," the man said. "I admire how hard you work, even when everyone else turns away." Nina blinked, unsure if she heard correctly. "I am Mr. Aladil," he continued. "I run a small business nearby. I want to offer you a job. You have a spirit I don't see in many." Nina's heart jumped. A job? After all the mockery and hardship? Could this be real? "But I'm not educated," she said quietly. "I only know how to work hard." "Education is important," Mr. Aladil said kindly, "but determination is rarer. Come meet me tomorrow at my office. We will talk." That night, Nina could hardly sleep. Her mind raced with hope and fear. Could this be the chance she had been praying for, or another trap to humiliate her? Morning came with heavy clouds, but Nina walked to Mr. Aladil's office, clutching her patched bag tight. The office was small but neat. Mr. Oladiel welcomed her warmly and explained his business. He needed someone trustworthy to help with deliveries and record keeping. "You will learn on the job," he said, "and I will pay you fairly." Nina felt tears well up. For once, someone saw her not as poor or useless, but as capable. She agreed. Back at the compound, news spread quickly. Angela scoffed. "So, the poor girl thinks she can be somebody now. See how long that lasts." Joy whispered, "If she fails, she will be humiliated even more." Nina ignored them. She worked hard every day, waking before dawn and returning after sunset, learning and growing. But the nights were the hardest. She missed her mother, missed the days when she could just cry freely. One evening, Daniel approached her quietly. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. "Don't let them break your spirit." Nina smiled, her heart aching. "Thank you." Weeks later, Mr. Oladiel gave Nina a special task to deliver an important letter to a wealthy client. On her way, Nina was stopped by Angela and her gang. "Look who thinks she's important now," Angela sneered, grabbing Nina's arm. "Let go," Nina shouted, trying to break free. Angela pulled her close, whispering, "You will never be one of us. Remember that." Suddenly, a voice thundered, "Enough." Daniel appeared with a few men, and Angela stepped back. Nina's heart pounded anger, fear, and something else she hadn't felt in a long time, protection. That night, as Nina lay awake, she thought about the strange man's kindness, Daniel's quiet support, and the harshness of her world. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Some stones are meant to break you, but others are meant to build bridges. I choose to build." Nina's days had started to brighten. The job with Mr. Oladiel gave her hope, and Daniel's quiet support made her heart warmer. But as she walked through the compound, a restless feeling crawled inside her like an unseen shadow. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned dark, Nina was returning from work, tired but smiling. Suddenly, a voice called her name sharply. "Nina!" She turned to see Mama Kemi, the village elder, standing near the old well. Her face was serious, almost grim. "Come with me," Mama Kemi said. Nina followed, curiosity mixing with unease. They reached a small hut at the edge of the compound. Inside, a dusty old box sat on a wooden table. Mama Kemi opened it carefully, pulling out faded letters and torn photographs. "I have something to show you," she said softly. Nina's hands trembled as she looked at the pictures. They showed a younger woman, her mother, smiling, holding a baby. "But this baby, it's not me," Nina whispered, confused. Mama Kemi nodded. "There is a story no one told you." Nina's heart pounded. "What do you mean?" Mama Kemi took a deep breath. "Years ago, before you were born, your mother and father had another child, a boy. He was taken away. No one knows where. After that, your mother was cursed with barrenness. Many thought it was her fault. They blamed her. But the truth is hidden in that child's fate." Nina felt tears burn her eyes. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because the secret was dangerous," Mama Kemi said. "The ones who took your brother wanted to keep the family divided. They wanted your mother blamed, so she would suffer alone." Nina's mind raced. Could this be why the compound turned against her? Why the mockery and pain? The next day, Nina found Daniel. She needed to know everything. "Daniel," she said quietly, "do you know anything about my brother? The one taken away?" Daniel's face changed. His eyes darkened. "There's more than you know," he admitted. "But it's not safe to talk here." He led her to a quiet place behind the old mango tree. "Years ago," Daniel began, "there was a powerful man in this village. He wanted to control everything, including your family. Your brother was a threat to him, so he took the boy and hid him far away." Nina's breath caught. "Why?" "Because your family was poor but proud," Daniel said. "That boy was the key to breaking the man's hold. If he disappeared, your family would fall apart." Nina felt anger, sadness, and fear all at once. "But how does this connect to me? Why was I blamed?" "Because when the boy was taken, your mother's heart broke. The village blamed her for losing the child, and your in-laws. They used this to hurt you, to keep control." That night, Nina sat alone, staring at the stars. Could her family's pain be part of a bigger plan? Was the curse really just a lie made to hide the truth? Her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Some truths are better left buried. Stop digging or you will lose everything. Nina's heart froze. Nina stared at the message on her phone, her heart pounding fast. Some truths are better left buried. Stop digging or you will lose everything. Who would send such a warning? And why? She tried to shake off the fear, but deep inside, she knew someone powerful wanted her to stop. Her mother's pain, the cruelty of her in-laws, the missing brother, it all felt connected in a web she was just starting to see. The next morning, Nina met Daniel by the market. His eyes looked darker than usual. "They know," he said quietly. "People in the village have eyes everywhere. Someone doesn't want you to find your brother." Nina clenched her fists. "I can't stop now. My mother deserves to know the truth. I deserve to know." Daniel hesitated, then said, "There's something you need to see." He led her to an old abandoned house on the village edge. Inside was a dusty chest. Daniel pulled out a faded, torn letter. Nina's hands trembled as she read it. "The boy is alive, but if anyone looks for him, the consequences will be deadly. Keep the secret or suffer the cost." Her breath caught. Suddenly, a noise behind them made Nina spin around, but there was no one, only shadows. Days later, Nina returned home to find her door slightly open. Inside, her small room was untouched except for one thing. On the floor lay a broken photograph, half of her mother's smiling face, and half of a little boy. Her throat tightened. Someone had been inside, someone watching. The insults from her in-laws grew worse. "You'll never have children, you bring shame," they spat like venom. But Nina's spirit refused to break. That night, Mama Kemi came to her with a small rusty key. "This belonged to your mother," she whispered. "It opens a box hidden years ago. The answers you seek are inside." Nina took the key, feeling its cold metal in her palm like a lifeline. One night, as Nina slept, footsteps crept outside her window. A soft voice called her name. She froze, heart thundering. The next day, slipped under her door, new note read, "Last warning, stop now, or lose everything you love." Years had passed since Nina first heard the cruel words of her neighbors and in-laws. Those who once whispered behind her back, who laughed at her worn clothes and empty kitchen, never imagined the path her life would take. Nina stood before the gates of the large compound she now owned. Her heart beat with quiet pride and a touch of disbelief. This was the very place where she had once been mocked, called worthless, and treated like she would never rise above her poverty. Now, the compound gleamed in the afternoon sun, new walls, fresh paint, and a garden blooming with flowers. The people who once laughed at her stood across the street, staring with shock and envy. Their eyes widened when they saw the name on the gate, Nina's compound. She remembered those long days when she worked from dawn till dusk selling little things at the market, saving every coin she could. She never forgot the cold nights, the hunger, or the pain of rejection, but she also never gave up. Through hard work, small investments, and a heart that refused to break, Nina had built a business. Slowly, she bought more land, then the houses next door. Piece by piece, she turned the place where she was once an outcast into a home full of life and hope. That morning, Nina walked to the local market in a new dress, her steps confident. She bought sacks of rice, bags of sugar, and crates of fresh vegetables. Instead of keeping them for herself, she loaded them onto a truck. Word spread quickly. Nina was giving food to the poor, to the mothers struggling to feed their children, to the old men and women who had no family. People gathered, some hesitant, others with tears in their eyes. She handed out food with a gentle smile. One woman whispered, "She was just like us. But now she is our blessing." Nina's eyes shone as she spoke to the crowd. Never let where you start decide where you will end. Life is not about how much you have, but what you do with what you have. I was once poor, looked down on, and hurt, but I chose to believe in myself, to keep going even when hope felt lost. Her voice grew stronger, filled with warmth and wisdom. To those who mock, remember this: your judgment does not define me. Your words do not break me. I stand here not just for me, but for every person who has been told they are nothing. You can rise, you can shine, and when you do, be kind. Help others climb too. The crowd cheered. Some who mocked her now approached with shame, But Nina only smiled and said, "We all have our battles. Let's move forward together." As the sun set over the compound, Nina looked up at the sky. The journey had been long and painful, but she was home finally, free from the shadows of the past. Her story became a beacon for the village, a reminder that courage, patience, and kindness can change even the hardest of fates.